Hello, and welcome to this presentation created for IBM OpenPages customers. The aim of this presentation is to demonstrate how it is possible to create simple alerts based on IBM OpenPages data. My name is James Melville, and I am a GRC specialist dedicated to OpenPages customer success. IBM Event Studio, part of the IBM Cognos BI suite, which comes with IBM OpenPages, has a very powerful Event Studio capability, allowing you to set up alerts based on data changes within IBM OpenPages. However, there are different ways of creating alerts to customers. So we would not be using this approach if there were out-of-the-box alerts already. For example, alerts to action owners when a new action is assigned to them. We would also not use this approach if we were using one of the many workflow capabilities that comes with IBM OpenPages, like IBM Lifecycle or IBM Business Process Manager that now comes with IBM OpenPages from version 7.3 onwards. Also, there is the capability within the Cognos BI to create burst reports where you could pull together many different alerts across multiple different data points. And this could be useful for weekly updates, for example. However, if your scenario is not met by one of these other options, then using IBM Event Studio may be your best choice. The scenario that we're going to go with is that we need to set up an alert to risk owners when KRIs associated to their risks go to breach. So how would we do this? Let's get started. I'm in IBM OpenPages, and from here I'm going to launch Cognos Connections. Within Cognos Connections, I am able to launch Event Studio and connect to our data source, which is of course our OpenPages package. Now we are presented with the main IBM Cognos Event Studio screen. From here I've got the various processes I can follow, which we'll go through in a second. We've also got down here on the left hand side all the insertable object which we can place in the main work area. And here we've got the main work area. So what do we need to do? The first thing we need to do is define the event. And we can do this by using our data sources. Once we've defined our event, we will add some tasks. Then we will manage our execution rules. And then we will schedule the agent to run on a regular basis. So let's start off by defining the event. I'm going to go to my risk data, and I've got a package here which has my risk data associated to my KRIs and loss events. These are referred to as namespaces, and the namespaces you have available will be as defined in your configuration of OpenPages. For my one, I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at my KRI information. And from here, I'm going to drag in the breach status, which is a enumeration field, i.e. a drop-down selection field. So from here, I've got my breach status, and I can simply add it to my expression here. And my expression is going to be rather like an Excel expression. It's going to be very simple. I've got my breach status. When that equals, and if I can't remember the exact names that I've defined for this drop down, I can click on a button here to the right that says select values, and I can go and select a value, in this case red, which is when it goes to breach, and click OK. So I've defined my expression. When the key risk indicator goes to red, then the event is true. The next part of this is, because this namespace has already linked the risks and indicators, I don't need to worry about tables and joins or anything like that. I can now go to my risk area, find my risk owner, and I'm going to add a further condition. And this is simply a data validation condition to say when the risk owner is not null, i.e. if the risk owner field is allowed to be left empty, and normally of course it would be a mandatory field, but if it is left empty, then don't run this condition because we can't email someone if we don't know who that person is. So there, we've now completed the expression for running the event. And I can test that by clicking on the validate button to the right here. It's gone away, validated, and found no errors. So the next thing I'm going to do is save this down. And I'm going to give it a simple name, which is Risk Owner Alert for KOI Breach. And click OK. So I've saved down this event, and now I can have a look at the data query that I've created. So I've created a query by clicking on the bottom left here, looking at my data items, and I'm bringing a query of the KOI breach data and the risk owner. So I want to add some further information because what I want to do next is I want to email the risk owner, and in that email I want to put some further data, such as the risk name. So if I highlight over the risk name, right click, I can insert this as a data item. If I go back now to my data query items, I can see that risk name has been added. If I go back now to my packages here, I can find the KRI and also find its name and add that to the query. The next things I want to add is the email address and the first and last name of the risk owner, because I want to email them to their email address and I want to address them by their full name rather than their logon name. So to do this, I'm going to insert some calculations. And the first one I'm going to do is the risk owner email address. And I'm going to add an expression. Now, at the bottom left of the insertable objects here, I've got in the middle there functions. If I click on functions, I've got various functions here to be able to do calculations, date and time calculations, summaries, so on and so forth. I've also got some OpenPages calculations. There are many calculations here, and the OpenPages report manual details these in more length. But there are ones where you can retrieve values of fields 30 days ago, 60 days ago, a year ago, for nice comparisons in reports. But I'm going to grab this one here, which is the get display name. And I'm going to put that into my expression. And this particular expression has 3 values that you need to set. The first one is the name, in this case the risk name. The second one is a language. Now because it's a name, I'm just going to leave that blank and it's going to bring the default name back. And then finally, I need to specify what I want to bring out. And the syntax around this again is all documented in the manual, but I'm going to use the email address, which is %em for email, semicolon. I'm just going to put those in there and then finish off the bracket. And if I click the validate button here, it again comes back with no errors. So that's fantastic. You click OK on that. And the next thing I'm going to do is add another calculation. And this time I'm going to put risk owner's name. Again, I'm going to go back to the functions, bring in the same function I was using before, for the same data item I was in before, which was the risk owner. And again, I'm going to use null because this is a name for the language. And then now I'm going to put in the syntax for the name. So it's percentage sign. This time I'm going to do FN for first name, semicolon. Then I'm going to just do a comma space and percentage LN for last name, semicolon. And then I'm going to put those together and put the end of the brackets. As discussed before, the IBM OpenPages Report Studio manual lists all the functions available and what parameters to use with the various options available. So I'll just validate that, click OK, and now I have all my data items. The final one I might use is the link, of course, to the risk. So I'll go back to the risks items, find my detail page URL, and insert that as a data item. Now, from the latest versions of OpenPages, we could be directing straight to an activity view or straight to a list or a grid view. So you may have a list of all your various risks here, or all your indicators that have gone to breach, and you could use that instead of the risk detail page URL. But I'm going to use the risk detail page URL for this particular example. So what I can do now is just check and validate the data that I have available. So I'm going to click up here and go to preview, and that's going to run the data query. So here I can see the breach status, the risk owner, the risk name, the KRI name, the email address doesn't appear to be correct, so we'll go and have a look at that. Risk owner's name, which does appear to be correct, first name then last name, and a detail page URL. So if we make a mistake, as I've just done, you just click on the risk owner's email address in my case, right click, edit that definition. It's going to give us a warning message that it may change things. We're fine with that. And as we can see here, rather than putting a risk owner's name here, I've got the risk name. So it's really simple just to make changes. It's quite a forgiving tool here. So I'm going to delete risk name, click on the risk owner, and put that in instead. And again, I'm going to validate, make sure I've not made any mistakes, and I'm going to preview. There we go. Now I've got the risk owner's email address. Fantastic. So now my query is correct. I'm just going to save it. And now I'm going to add a task. So if I click on the button here in the I want to process area, I can see I've got the first option, which is send an email. I could publish a news item to the sort of Cognos connections area. I could run a report, run a job, run an agent, and various other options that are some of the more advanced Cognos BI areas, including updating databases, calling web services, etc. I'm just going to send an email. So I've got to click on Add Task Send Email, and now I've got a couple of boxes here. So the first box I've got is the to box. So I've got the risk owner's email highlighted here on the insertable objects. I click on the to, and it's going to send it to the risk owner. I could get it CCing people if I wanted to. The next aspect is the subject. So I'm just going to type in KRI breach of associated risks, and then I'm going to put dear risk owner's name, the following KRIs have gone to breach and directly impact risks you own. And now I'm going to put that relevant information in. So I'm going to put the KRI in, then your risk, and then in brackets I'm going to put a link to the detail page. There we go. And finally, I'm going to put a little message. Please evaluate the associated risks and take the appropriate action. Kind regards, James. Great. Now, if I had run reports in a previous task, I could attach those reports, add links, so on and so forth. But I'm not going to do any of that. I'm simply going to leave this as it is and save it. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is look at the execution rules. Now, the execution rules happen per task. So, for this particular task, which is your KRI breach of associated risks, I can then select whether it's just for new events, i.e. as soon as the indicator goes to breach, which is appropriate, or ongoing. Now, if I was to schedule this to run every night, I'm sure risk owners don't want to be emailed every day that that indicator is at breach. Wouldn't be appropriate, and before you know it, you would end up in the spam box. So I'm going to untick that particular option. I could have it on ceased events. So I could set up another task to say, to only run when it's ceased, to say, the following indicators are no longer at breach. Please reevaluate your risks. So that could be another task I could set up and use the ceased event to activate. Okay, the next element we got is the event key. So what it's looking at to know whether it's a new event. If I look at the event key, it's got all the data items we've presently used. So if the risk owner changes of any associated risks, they would get alerted. The risk owner's name changes, it would get alerted, so on and so forth. So that's not really appropriate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of these. I'm going to assume that if a new risk owner is allocated, that they're going to review all their risks anyway. They don't want separate alerts about this particular indicator. So I'm just going to put KRI, name, and breach status. There we go. So that would be the event key, and those are the fields it would look at to understand if a new event has occurred. And I'm going to click OK. The final thing we want to do is to schedule the agent. Now, the agent can run, if you wanted to, every minute, every hour, every day. Now, some of our customers say to me, well, we need it every minute, every second. It's not necessarily appropriate. So if an indicator has just gone to breach, then do their risk owner leads look at it that minute? Or do you just need an email every day? And of course, the longer the frequency, the more batched up the email will be. So if 3 indicators went to risk that day, they'll get 1 email at the end of the day, rather than 3 emails during the day. Again, we need to look at the frequency and the interaction we want to have with our customers. I'm going to set this to be every day. I could set it to be every week on a Monday or Tuesday or whenever, or every month or year, or so on and so forth. But I'm going to go every day. And again, I'm going to click OK on that and click Save. So there we have it. We've set up a new alert to email risk owners when associated KRIs go to breach. If I close this down now and go back into Cognos Connections, I can see this new alert that we've set up. And rather than waiting for it to run on the schedule, I'm just going to run it straight away so I can test it. So there we go, it's now being sent. And now if we go to our email box, I can then refresh the email box for that particular user, and I can see I've got an email to Orville notifying them of their particular indicator and associated risks that have gone to breach. And I could click on that directly to open up that area within OpenPages. I'll log in as that user. I hope you found this presentation useful, and I thank you for your time.